Hello and welcome to another episode of the 05 Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Abernathy. And in today's episode, today's going to be a little bit shorter than normal, but I wanted to give a quick rundown of the most important skill sets that you need to develop in your safety ministry and its team members. A lot of times when people think church safety team or church security team, they immediately want to go to firearms training. And they think that that is the most important skill set you can have. Is it important? Absolutely. In fact, I was just listening to the Church Emergency podcast with Terry Behringer, and he tells a story where he goes up to a guy that you could tell is armed, and he's standing watch, and he says, "Hey man, what are you going to do if somebody gets up and starts arguing with the pastor or telling that the pastor's a liar and whatnot?" And the guy kind of taps his hip and smiles and says, "That's what my friend Smith & Wesson is for." And, Terry tells that story, and I had to laugh because I've had that exact same interaction multiple times over when you're working with a safety team and you ask that question. All right, if you have multiple protesters in your church, like what they had in Minneapolis, how are you going to handle that? And the standard response is, well, that's what we're armed for. So are you going to shoot them? Or are you just going to hope that the fact that you're carrying a gun scares them enough into submission? And unfortunately, a lot of church safety teams think that just because they're armed, everybody's going to be afraid of them and be scared into submission. That carrying a weapon makes them superheroes, super medics, super whatever. And unfortunately, that's not the case. Just because you carry a gun does not make you security. I know lots of people that carry guns that probably shouldn't be carrying guns because of lack of training and experience. And so what I want to discuss today are the most important skill sets and kind of the order in which you should focus on learning these skill sets and why they're important. So the first skill set I want to talk about is probably going to surprise you. I'm going to say the most important skill set that you can develop is being in touch with and listening to the intuition driven by the Holy Spirit. Developing that skill set through a regular time in the Word and a regular time in prayer, and through practicing obeying that intuition in your daily life. That skill set will be utilized more often, not only in church security, but in your daily life than any other skill set that you could develop on a safety ministry. And so that is the most important thing. So if you are a safety ministry leader, if you are a church leader and you're building one of these teams, emphasize the necessity of a strong daily walk with Christ. Because without that Holy Spirit guidance, the propensity for you to mess up goes through the roof, especially as a volunteer security team or a volunteer medical response team. Whatever you're responding to, if you don't do it as a profession and you don't have regular experience, even if you did it as a profession for years and years, but you've been retired for a long time, you are opening yourself up to misjudgments, mischaracterizations, and misapplication of skills because you're not in tune with what the Holy Spirit's trying to tell you in a given situation. You're going to be led by fear. You're going to be led by just a paranoia that everybody is a threat. I see this from in safety team chats online. I see it talking with other church safety teams. I've seen it with some of my own safety team members where they're on duty and somebody that we call them a DLR, somebody that don't look right, comes to the church, and immediately the first thing they think is a threat. And that is not what the church safety ministry should be about. The church safety ministry should look at that person and see a ministry opportunity first, and then in our engagement with them, determine whether or not they're a threat. Jesus came to seek and save the lost. It's not the well who need a doctor, it's the sick. So when you have somebody that comes up that doesn't fit your normal collar wearing, khaki Christian stereotypical look, and maybe they're tatted up, maybe their hair's funny colors, maybe they've got rainbow stickers all over their Ford Focus or whatever have you. But if you immediately look at that person as a potential protester or a potential threat without engaging them, and all you do is give them the stink eye, you are missing some incredible ministry opportunities. So first and foremost, develop that skill set through a daily walk with Christ. Skill set number 2 that goes along with number 1 is get trained in threat recognition and reporting. Barring all other skill sets, the ability to recognize a potential threat and how to report that threat either through 911 or through the rest of your team, that is a basis for the security of what you got. If you don't understand how to recognize a threat, the firearms, the hands-on, none of that stuff really matters because, again, the propensity to make a mistake goes through the roof if you don't understand basic threat recognition and reporting principles. So get a class, get training on threat recognition. At 05 safety training, we do this training in person. We're working on developing a platform to be able to offer it online, but in reality, it's really good to do in person. I'm a huge proponent of in-person training, and so get some threat recognition. At the very least, read 2 books: "When Violence is the Answer" and "Left of Bang." Read those 2 books, and you will learn plenty about threat recognition. The next skill set that I think you need to develop is radio communications. Again, this is an underrated skill set. We immediately want to go to CPR and we immediately want to go to firearms. CPR, the odds of that happening are very, very low. Is the traumatic factor, is the emergency factor high? Yes, absolutely. Same thing with an active attack. The emergency factor of that and the necessity of being able to address that skillfully is very, very important. But you are going to use radio communications every single shift. And so if you don't understand radio discipline, how to speak clearly on the radio, how to initiate and close a communication loop, if you don't understand that principle, all of that's going to go by the wayside. When a true emergency happens, if you don't have radio comms and you cannot communicate clearly, the whole scene is going to fall apart. Ask any military person, ask any first responder, what's the first thing to go when crap hits the fan? And it's usually communications. And it's a lack of discipline, and it's often a lack of training. All right, talking on a radio is very different than talking on in person or even on the phone. And so that's probably the next skill set that I think is the most important to develop is emergency radio communications and how to do that well. After that, I would say we need to start getting into some medical training. CPR, first aid, stop the bleed. Those 3 skill sets, start training those because you are going to use medical skills way more than you're going to use enforcement skills. I've been a part of my team. Like I said, for 8 years, I've been tracking all of our responses for the last 3 years, and I would venture to say that 95% of our responses are medical in nature. 95%, and that's not an exaggeration. In fact, I'm probably underestimating that. More often than not, you're putting Band-Aids on boo-boos. You're putting ice on bumps. You're helping a teenager having a panic attack calm down, or even an adult. You're helping them calm down. You're helping them to breathe easy. And in the more acute situations, you're identifying a chest pain and the need to call 911, or you're identifying potential dehydration, or here in Texas, you're identifying potential heat exhaust or heat stroke. We've got tons of those. Understanding medical principles, first aid, CPR, stop the bleed. Those are really, really important. So start training those. A lot of times when you take a CPR class or a first aid class, they say that that class needs to be renewed every 2 years. I disagree with that. Even though I teach CPR and our certification cards say every 2 years, I strongly recommend for a church safety ministry that they need to train CPR and first aid minimum once a year. Minimum once a year, preferably more than that. If anything, do a skill day where you learn the principles of CPR and first aid, and then do a scenario day where you put those skills into practice. That's really the best way to develop that skill set, is to learn the skills and then put it into practice in some mock scenarios. That also gives you the opportunity to practice your emergency radio comms. And so you get two birds, one stone. Next, after CPR first aid, stop the bleed, that's where I would throw in firearms training. Firearms training, not for the sake of being a good marksman, but for the sake of being a good gunfighter. There is a big difference between being able to put rounds on paper and being able to put rounds in a potential threat, especially if the rounds are coming back at you. So when you build a good gunfighter, you've got to build good, safe weapon handling skills first. Because if you're handling your weapon in a tight environment or a potentially crowded environment, remember your weapon safety rules, right? If you don't know how to implement those weapon safety rules without having to think about it, you're going to accidentally have your finger on the trigger. You're going to flag people and accidentally be pointing your weapon at things you don't intend to destroy. And you're not going to be very well versed in understanding your target and target environment. And so build that weapon handling skill set first. And you can do that without firing a single live round. You could do lots of dry fire. Go on to Substack, to the 05 Safety Training Substack. My co-author, Grant Flynn, has put a number of articles with very good dry fire drills. Check those out. Practice them. Because those are the baseline. Those are the foundation for becoming a good gunfighter. Then we're going to build up marksmanship. And building marksmanship is being able to put rounds on target, being able to put them on target faster from the draw, from the low ready, from target right, target threat, threat right, threat left, threat behind you, from those different directions, adding in the ability to shoot and move, adding in the ability to discern targets and to change angles. Those are all parts of becoming a good gunfighter, is understanding how to read the threat and the threat environment and make the best shot in the shortest amount of time in the safest way possible. Because in the church environment, there's a high likelihood that there's going to be innocent people around. Heaven forbid it's in a crowded environment. That's worst case scenario. Best case scenario, it's in the parking lot, but there's still the potential for people to be there. And there's still the potential for rounds to go off grid. And so in my church in particular, we've got a high school across the street on one side. We've got a private school adjacent to us on the other side. We've got a Section 8 neighborhood right next to us, and we got a shopping center on the other side. We need to know where our rounds are going, and we need to be very good at understanding that. And so that is part of the gunfighting concept that you need to train. Once and only once you have developed those abilities and the ability to be a gunfighter, and you have those basic skill sets, and now you're working towards getting better at them, that's when we start adding in tactics and room clearing and CQB and things like that. We don't add CQB and all that until we have the gunfighter skills, because if you can't handle your weapon safely, if you can't put rounds on target quickly, if you can't understand your target and target environment, I don't want you clearing rooms. Because if you're clearing rooms, especially if you haven't trained any target discernment, I don't want you clearing rooms, because you're likely going to shoot an innocent person. And if not that, you're going to put a round through the bad guy, through the drywall behind him, and into an innocent person in the next room if you don't understand angles. So there's a lot more that goes into responding with a weapon than just being able to shoot it. You can't operate off of instinct when it comes to gunfighting. You have to be a thinking fighter. And if you haven't trained that, if you haven't built your skill sets from the ground up, you're going to do more harm than good. You're more dangerous than you are helpful. So don't skip to the ninja stuff. You need to develop your groundwork, to develop your basics, your fundamentals first. As we build in our CQB and our room clearing and our tactics, now we can start testing all of this by doing force on force training. Force on force training is a great way to put it all together, add the element of stress, and the element of stress is really going to reveal to you what it is you need to polish up. Do you need to polish up radio comms? Do you need to polish up your tactics? Do you need to polish up your sight picture and alignment when you're engaging a target? Do you need to polish up your medical? Because with force on force training, you can add in the medical component by going full scale scenario. That's something that we at 05 safety training are working on implementing once we get our force on force equipment through our Give, Send, Go campaign, shameless plug. But once we get all that, the purpose of that is to be able to start a team out with some force on force scenarios in the first half of the day. And then in the back half of the day, we're going to go into full scale active attack response scenarios where there's an active attacker, there are victims, and you have to address the attacker, and then you have to triage and treat victims, and you have to communicate and turn over to first responders. That's a whole other skill set that belongs in a category all its own, is your active attack response. That needs to be a coordinated, guided response plan. And so that's something else that you need to develop as a team, is how are you going to coordinate your response? How are you going to hand it over to first responders? That is going to be another episode. That is potentially going to be an online seminar, like a Zoom style seminar that I plan on doing, just because there's a lot of great information out there, but there's not really good applicable information for the church safety ministry and how the church safety team responds to an active attacker. There's the police side, there's the civilian side, and the safety ministry kind of operates somewhere in between. And so that's what we at 05 Safety Training have put together is a active attack response guide for church safety teams that implements elements of the law enforcement side and elements of the civilian side to keep your congregation as safe as possible, to eliminate the threat as soon as possible, and to be able to stabilize the scene as best as possible. But those are the skill sets in order that I think as church safety team or church safety ministry, especially if they're just starting out, that's the order and those are the skill sets that I think they need to develop. Discernment and intuition through the Holy Spirit, threat recognition and reporting, radio communications, especially emergency radio communications, medical skills, firearm skills, gunfighting skills, tactics, CQB, and then implement your force on force and your top tier stress inoculation training. But at the very least, just go out there and train. There's an old saying that we don't rise to the occasion. We always sink to the lowest level of our training. That gets used in the military a lot. That gets used in the first responder world a lot. I've lived that very thing. I could tell you stories of sinking down to the lowest level of your training. In fact, I'll give you a quick one. Had a vehicle rescue years back where a 15-year-old had stolen a Suburban and rolled it down an embankment. And we have these stabilization jacks. We call them rescue jacks that we use that can lift a vehicle, but they can also stabilize it from rolling over. And I had trained those rescue jacks very thoroughly earlier on in my career, but I hadn't touched them a whole lot. I'd built the mental Rolodex really thoroughly, but I hadn't touched them a lot in the previous year or so. And when we had to stabilize that vehicle and lift it, I resorted back to what I had trained years before without even thinking about it. And I I couldn't tell you now how I put those rescue jacks in place or how I got them stabilized. I couldn't tell you. I went into autopilot mode. I resorted to what I had trained thoroughly previously. And the next thing I know, we have stabilized that Suburban and we are lifting it off of this kid. And to this day, years and years later, I can't tell you exactly how it happened. I just did it. And that's what good training does for you, is it builds unconscious competence. And so that's how you need to approach your team's training, whether it's something as simple as threat recognition or something as advanced as active attack response. Train it, train it, train it. Test it, refine it, train it again. And then test it, refine it, and train again. And that's how you get better. That's how you build skill sets that you can do without thinking. All right. Well, thanks again for joining me. Again, I'm going to pitch our Give, Send, Go. Please help us raise this money to buy force-on-force equipment to make this training available and affordable for church safety teams. Like I've said before, military, SWAT teams, police, they use force-on-force training to get good at what they do. That training is not readily available, and it's definitely not affordable for church safety teams. And anybody that's doing it is not catering it to church safety ministries and how we operate as a ministry. We're not a SWAT team, right? So we shouldn't be training like a SWAT team. And so that's what we're wanting to do at 05 Safety Training, is buy this equipment and train church safety teams in how they would respond in a church scenario, active attack scenario. So the link is going to be in the show notes. Please support us with that. We would greatly appreciate it. Also, please support us on Substack. That's one of the best ways you can support us, is subscribing and becoming a paid subscriber on Substack. So it's the 05 Safety Training Substack. That link will also be in the show notes. Also, please like, comment, give us a rating on Spotify. Do all those things just to help get our ministry out there to more people. But for everybody that follows us, everybody that listens, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for listening to me yabber on about something that I just love so much. But again, what are we here for? We're here to protect his people and give him the glory. We'll see you next time.